Now let's set up a camera. So press Shift+A and select camera. Then to align the camera with the current view, press Ctrl, Alt, and 0 on the numpad. You can also go to the View menu, Align View, then select Align Active Camera to View. Now if you go to Output Properties from here, you can also change the X and Y resolution. Let's go for a square ratio. Now if need to adjust the camera view, you will have to first drag this arrow on the top right corner. Or you can simply press N on the keyboard. This will show us some extra menus. So click on the View menu in the sidebar, then mark the camera to view. Now you can adjust the position, how you would normally do. After you are done, disable camera to view. Now, let's add materials to the model. So go to Material Properties, and click on New. Then click on the base color, and choose any color from here. But even after selecting a color, you don't see any on the model. This is because you are currently in solid mode. To preview the materials, you will have to go to Material Preview mode first. Now, since the camera is interfering with our model here, let's hide it for now, by clicking on the eye symbol in the outliner. Now, even though we haven't added any lights in the scene, we can see the model. This is because currently lighting is done by a built-in HDRI. If you click on the drop-down menu on the top right, and click on the sphere, you will see some more HDRIs, which you can choose. Now left-click on the camera icon here to enter camera view, or simply press 0 on the numpad. Now, we want the middle part of the body to have a different material. Before adding material to it, let's separate it from the main body. So select the body, and enter its edit mode. Then press A to select all, press P on the keyboard, and select by loose parts. This will separate everything, which is not connected by any vertices. Now exit out of edit mode, and select the middle part. Then in the Material Properties, you can see the number 3 displayed. This means, currently 3 objects are sharing this same material. So, since we want the middle part to have a different material, click on the number to make it a single user. Then from the base color, select a color. Now, I also want this to be metallic, so increase the metallic slider all the way up to 1. Then to make it a bit reflective, lower down the roughness slider. Now, let's add material to the push buttons. We want this to have the same metallic material as before. So instead of adding a new material, we can click on the drop down here, and select the material we added just before. Now, since we duplicated the buttons with Alt+D, and not with Shift+D before, the buttons are still linked together. So they are sharing the same material. Now let's give our ring the same material as well. Before moving ahead, let's change the HDRI back to the default one. Then assign the same material to the text. And also assign that to the antenna as well. Now for this plate, we will need a different material. So click on New, and under Base Color, select one color. Now add material to the channel selector. Here, I want this part to have a metallic material. But I also don't want to separate it from the channel selector, and then add material to it. So to add separate material to this region, enter Edit mode. Then select the cuboid with Ctrl+L, after selecting some part of it. Then click on the plus symbol here in the Material Properties. Clicking on New will give you the option to select a new color. But let's select the metallic color we have been using throughout this video. After selecting it, you have to click on Assign to apply the material. Now select the legs in object mode, and add a new material to them. Simply lower down the value to get a black color. Now select the indicator, and add material to it. And if you click on the surface, you can select a glass material as well. Choose a color. Also, lower down the roughness by dragging the slider here. If you left-click on the name of the material, you can rename it as well. Now, let's add a plane, so our model has something to sit upon. Move the plane down with G on the keyboard. Then enter its edit mode. Press 2 for edge selection, and select the back edge. Then press C to extrude, and Z to lock the movement in the Z-axis. Then enter face selection, by pressing 3 on the keyboard, and select the back face. Now press S to scale, and then Shift plus Z, to restrict the movement in the Z-axis. Exit out of edit mode, then enter camera view by pressing 0 on the numpad. Now rotate the plane in the Z-axis, by pressing R and Z. Now in here, we can easily see the two planes connecting. So, if we want to have the illusion of an infinite background, we need to add a bevel to it. So go to Modifier Properties, and add a bevel modifier. Then increase the amount value. And also increase the number of segments. You can also shade it smooth. Now go to Material Properties, and assign a material to it as well. Switch back to the camera view. Now, let's set up the actual lights, which will affect the final render. But before doing that, let's split the viewport, so we can see the model from different angles at once. To split any editor, take the cursor to the corner of that editor. Once you see the plus sign appear, left-click drag to split that editor. You can adjust the editor size later on. Now in the first viewport, disable the gizmos, and also disable the overlays. Then press T on the keyboard to hide the toolbar, just to get more area. You can also simply left-click drag, once the double-sided arrow appears. Then in the second viewport, switch back to solid mode, and create another viewport. And if you want to close this editor, take the cursor near a common corner of two editors, then left-click drag it. Release the button, depending on which editor you want to close. Now, this method of splitting and closing viewports might take some time to get used to. Even many intermediate Blender users don't get it right every time. So don't get scared if you end up creating an infinite number of viewports. To split any editor, take the cursor near its edge boundary. Once the double-sided arrow appears, right-click on the mouse, and select the type of cut you want. Let's do a horizontal cut here. Then left-click, where you think is the right place to make the cut. And to collapse an editor, right-click after seeing the double-sided arrow. Then select Join Areas. And left-click on the editor which you want to get close. Let's split this editor again. Then with the cursor on top of one editor, press 7 on the numpad to enter the top view. And with the cursor on the other one, press 1 on the numpad for the front view. Now take the cursor on top of the menus over here. Then scroll the mouse wheel to make the right side menus visible. You can also simply drag with the middle mouse button to scroll the menus. And for those without 3-button mouse, use Alt plus left-click drag to slide the menus. Then click on the drop-down and turn on Scene Lights and Scene World. Turning these on will disable the built-in HDRI and use the lights present in the viewport. But here, even though we don't have any lights currently in the scene, we can still see the model. This is because of the world light. To make the scene completely dark, go to World Properties from here. Then in the base color, lower down the value. Now before adding lights, let's place the 3D cursor back to World Origin, since I want the lights to get added from the center. To do that, press Shift and S, then select the cursor to World Origin. Or simply go to Object menu. Snap. Cursor to World Origin. The option is also available on the right-click Context menu. Now press Shift and A, then under Lights, select Point Lamp. Then in the front view, press G, and move the lamp a bit up on the top right. Then in the top view, move the lamp a little back. We can also move the plane a bit, since it's too far I think. Then after selecting the lamp, go to Light Properties, and increase the power to around 15. Now, let's move the light and camera to a different collection. So after selecting the point lamp, press M on the keyboard. Then select a new collection. Name the collection, and select OK. And then after selecting the camera, press M, and select the newly created collection. Now let's hide the point light. And let's add an area light instead. Press G, and then Z to move it up. Now, I want this light to rotate around the object. But when we try to rotate, the light moves around its origin point. This is because of something called a pivot point. So, since we want the light to rotate around the model, we can first place the 3D cursor there. Then go to the pivot point menu up top, and change it to 3D cursor. Now anything you rotate, will rotate around the cursor. After rotating it in the front view, let's decrease its power to around 5 watts. Then rotate a bit more from the top view. Here I am making sure the front side is also illuminated a little bit as well. We will add one more light from the other side as well. First, hide all the other lights to get a better idea of the light's actual use. Add the light, then press G and Z to move it up in the Z axis. Then change the power to around 3. Press R to rotate it in the front view. Then rotate it in the top view. This light will give us that extra highlight over these metallic regions. Now unhide the lights to get an idea of how everything looks. Now here, I think rotating the channel selector a little will look more better. So, let's rotate it. But first, we need to change the pivot point back to the median point. Then I will scale it up using S and Shift plus Y, so it doesn't get scaled up in the Y axis. Also, select the plate and scale that upon the Z axis. And then move it slightly up. Now go to Render Properties. Then scroll down and select Color Management. I like to set the exposure to around 1. And also change the look to high contrast. Then with the render engine set to EV, you can render the image. It will come out just fine. Also in a short amount of time. But, let's render this in Cycles render engine. Rendering in Cycles will be heavy on your computer, so saving the project before rendering is advisable, in case Blender gets crashed while rendering. After selecting Cycles, if you want to see how the result looks, first turn on Viewport denoising. If you enter rendering mode without turning it on, you will see a noisy render. After turning it on, take the cursor to the first editor, and press Ctrl plus B, and cover the entire camera region. This will tell Blender to render out only this area. Now select the render mode from above. You can also select the render region. If you go to the View menu, View Regions, select Render Region, and left-click drag over the area required. After you think the scene is ready, turn the render denoising on as well. But before rendering the final image, let's save the project. So press Ctrl, Shift, and As. Then select a file folder. Name the project, and save it. Then go to the render menu above, and select Render Image. Or use the hotkey F12. Then give Blender some time to finish the rendering process. And after it's done, go to Image, and select Save As. In the file browser, select a folder. Name the image. Set the file format. And then select Save as Image. That concludes the radio tutorial series. Now give yourself a cookie as a reward for completing this course. The Blender community is very kind, so don't be afraid to share your work on different social media platforms. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I wish you all a very happy new year.